Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Meet the Dons Trust board. My name is George Jones. I'm hosting it this evening. With me, I've got Kevin Rye and James Longhurst. We're going to give it a minute or so just before we start, just to make sure that everyone who is joining us has time to get into the room. So this is your last opportunity to go get a drink or a snack, whatever you want to do for the evening. And we'll be starting in just under a minute. Thank you. Just to everyone just joining us, we'll be starting in just a few seconds now, just giving everyone a last minute opportunity to go and grab a drink and make sure that everyone who wants to be here is actually here. Looking at the number of people joining, that's stabilised now. So I think we are ready to start. So hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Meet the Dons Trust board. My name is George Jones. I'm the Assistant Secretary for the Dons Trust, and I am hosting this evening. Joining me tonight, I've got James Longhurst and Kevin Rye. So I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of questions coming in tonight. So I think we'll jump straight in. First question is something that I think has been the main topic of conversation around the trust over the summer, is regarding the membership changes. And the question that we've had wants to know what process we went through to get to those member changes. Who wants to answer that one?
Yeah, I'll go first. Kev, feel free to jump in. I think we said it a couple of times, but it's been an idea that was floating around since I think way back in kind of 2004 about linking membership with season tickets. It wasn't seen as feasible back then, but it's been kicking around for a couple of years more recently. And I think I joined the board in March, April time. It was well kind of through its process then. Lots of conversations between the club and the trust boards and, the marketing teams about how to make it work. We continued those up until the summer. James W came on board as well and was really enthusiastic about the opportunity. And then it kind of landed how you see it now. I'm not sure in terms of kind of like outlining like specific meetings and stuff like that. I don't think that's broadly useful, but I think, kind of that's the process.
Okay. Kev, do you have anything to add on that?
No, James is the guru on the board for this stuff, so I've got nothing to add now.
I think the next question that we had comes up to, I think, the next major topic of conversation for the whole membership. James, again, this one's probably for you. What are the board planning on doing to plan the communication strategy for the 50+1 debate?
Yeah,
sorry, very quickly. I'm really sorry to interrupt. I just want to make one point about this because I think it's really important. And I'm sorry for cutting across you, James. I think it's really important we stop calling it a 50+1 debate, because 50+1. I know I bore people with my background, but I worked at Supporters Direct for years. I worked in German football, worked in Swedish football, where they got a 50% plus 51% rule, which is quite similar. Look, when we're talking about this, we're talking about a need for the Dons Trust, as the owners of the football club, to ensure that we manage our debt properly. That necessitates, at the moment, as far as we can see, there is really no alternative to having to have the option to potentially reduce our shareholding whilst retaining control. Now, what's happened is as is the trend, as things happen now, it gets framed with a phrase. It's often just because that's the way that things are communicated, because it's about being succinct in a short message. And whilst there might be, things that it's factually correct to say that would be the threshold below which we wouldn't go. To keep framing as a 50+1 as though that kind of suggests that it's the same as what happens in Germany. Look, in Germany, we all know, as some other people have pointed out to me as well, that that's backed up by years of culture and tradition and law and practice within German economics and society and within football when it professionalized in the 60s. We've got to be very careful that whilst we talk about the technically correct issue of reducing the sharing down to a level like that, this isn't about 50+1. And we have to be talking about what's the approach we're trying to take here. It's to manage our debt and giving the Dons Trust board the tools to do that. And we're not just talking about the present board. I'm stepping down at the end of the year, and I'm not going to be standing again. It'll be the people who follow me. It'll be others who you put in place in order to manage these issues. So I just wanted to say that, because I think it's taken on something of almost mythical status, and sometimes it's actually quite confusing, and I think it can be quite misleading. But sorry, James, I just wanted to make that point.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up before I let James answer. Gary Davis would like to know, what would they board like members to call this process if we don't want to call it 50+?
It's about management of debt, George. It's about management of the debt that we hold that helped us to build Plough Lane, and that's not a very canny strap line. It's not a very succinct strap line, but strap lines are the kind of things that James comes up with, and people like Charlie Talbot are very good at. The key is that we stick to what the facts are, which is this is a process to manage our debt as a fan-owned football club, and that's the key. Sorry, James, carry on, mate.
It's all right. Now you've painted me as some kind of rogue Don Draper. I'll carry on. All I would say I'll add to Kev's bit, and then I'll talk about the process a little bit, which was what the question was. I would just say, all I'd say on what Kev said is kind of broadly agree with all of that. The only thing I'd add is it's not just about managing the debt, although that is absolutely critical. It's also about our ability to grow, our ability to do capital investment and stuff like that as well. And so, kind of that is all I would add to that. In terms of I think the question was around how are we going to communicate around the restricted action votes that are coming up. There is, I think I've said a couple of times now on kind of pro boards and elsewhere that we've got lots of activity planned. I'm in the middle of, kind of on another screen over here, writing a load of things that builds on loads of work that's been done through the consultation process, through kind of years of work that's been done by the boards, the finance committee, the PLC board, members, kind of interested third parties, all those kinds of people. So there's so much work to build on. So what I'm doing and have been doing for a while now is kind of gathering that all together with other people as well, not doing it all on my own by any stretch, and turning that into some documents that we can send out to members. We've got some events planned. I really want to kind of have the dates all firmed up before we share them, because I hate that kind of like saying we're going to be doing stuff and then not having the dates people can put in their diaries. But all of that, kind of comes in August when people are away on summer holidays and stuff like that. So there's some stuff in the air in terms of dates that I want to get nailed down, but there's loads to come. And I feel like we will all have lots of opportunity to discuss and debate this in lots of different forums, in lots of different ways. I'm super conscious that all our surveys tell us that members engage with us in a whole range of different ways. Kind of email, online, face-to-face, AGMs, SGMs, online debates, stuff like this as well. So we need to make sure that we give people lots of those points in which to talk to us. That's the most important thing, is that there's loads of different communications in lots of different opportunities. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. Bit of a holding answer, but there is more to come, and very soon.
Next up, someone wants to know, how are the board going to ensure both sides of the restricted action debate are represented evenly, and how are the board going to present the nuances of the debate?
I'll take that. Kev, jump in. The one word I'd pick on that is like evenly. So I think that kind of like we can't even begin to define that. Like you look at the kind of, I come from a journalism background. You look at the trouble BBC gets itself into trying to do balance. Like kind of like, is it even airtime? Is it even word count? Is it even status? Like that like which isn't the thrust of the question, I know, but I just wanted to kind of tackle that actually it's really hard to do anything with balance like that. What we are doing is looking at lots of ways. Like I've said, there's going to be lots of events for people to come and talk to us at and talk to each other at as well. I think I've mentioned in other forums that we are looking at ways to involve people who have different views on platforms as well. So we want to make sure there's a broad representation of views to members. That's really important to me, and I think it's really important to the board as well.
Can I just chuck in there, George?
Yeah.
The bit I'm picking up on is this evenly thing. And it just reminds me of what people talk about when they talk about the BBC, and what the BBC some quite often struggles with, which is this idea that you've got to be balanced. And balance doesn't mean that you present both sides of the argument completely evenly, because sometimes something is wrong and something is right. In the case of this, fan ownership is right for us. That's what we are. The issue is as James and I have both talked about, is A, management of debt, B, creation of opportunities to ensure we have ability to invest and grow, because there's lots of things we want to do. So it's really important that we have a thorough discussion of the issues, that we explain them well, that I think we seek sometimes outside external expert advice. I don't mean going to Deloitte and saying, give us the tools that a traditional company would need in order to borrow against its assets, because we're not in that's not the kind of organization we are. We're kind of organization that needs to protect all of that, try to grow ourselves, and always come back to the fact that we're a community benefit society that owns a football club, and that means we need security of a different form. We are a different kind of football club in that respect. So it's really important that what we do is present the facts and the issues as clearly as possible, rather than necessarily evenly or in some balanced form. If I take that as a sort of, if I've understood the intimation or the question correctly.
Thank you. Alex Feely's submitted a live question. He says they've heard a lot about this consultation process, but it doesn't feel like they've been consulted on any other options. He wants to know, other than changing 75% plus one, how was the process run? Who took part? How many people took part? And what other options were discussed?
That, I think, would be the process of consultation began just after I joined the board, when I created a formal consultation process. So my background, other than being fan engagement in football, is also more widely engagement and consultation processes in local government and things like that. I still do the occasional piece of work in that field. So we created, albeit it wasn't a full spec, because you'd be talking about tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of pounds. It wasn't a full spec consultation process, but I drafted in someone from ECF, which is an expert in engagement and consultation processes. It happens to be the company that I do consult for, which is why we put it through the board, even though it was well below the threshold, and the board agreed it was a good idea. Ollie Deed signed off all the processes. We did formal events online and at Plough Lane, and then we put the results out in a form that everyone could understand. So we have done quite extensive consultation, and it did what it did for us. What it wasn't about was telling us, because this is what people, I think, mix up with consultation sometimes, is it's not about saying, do you want this, this, or this? That kind of consultation and engagement process tends to be about getting a sense of how people feel about stuff, getting to understand how they express how they feel about this issue. In this case, the football club, how it's owned, how they want it to be secure in the future, what they're prepared to countenance, to agree to keep security whilst ensuring that, in our case, you could pay debt down and things like that. And it was very, very, it was incredibly useful process, as I thought it would be, as the board hoped it would be. It gave us, what it gave us was a steer that whilst members, and I'm doing slightly off the top of my head, but I've got a fairly decent memory of it, whilst members were prepared to see the shareholding reduced in order to do the things that James and I have outlined, there absolutely had to be security, and that the issue around the ownership of the stadium being, that lurks in our background. We know that over many, many years as part of our founding story, and the ownership of the club by the fans, those two issues, along with some other stuff related to that. But those two things were absolutely fundamental. So what actually the consultation process did was gave us a sort of guide to how we might go through something like this. And it was pretty clear that everyone understood and was grown up enough to accept that there were some things we might have to do that were maybe difficult decisions, but that provided we went through a proper process and we had proper locks and proper protection, they were prepared to consider these things. In the end, we take it to a vote of the restricted actions, which are deliberately high and were created in 2008 in order to be the kind of asset, the kind of lot that Newport County didn't have, that Chesterfield didn't have, that Stockport didn't have, that all these other clubs didn't have, to make sure that we could remain fan-owned and be secure in our stadium. So honestly, I spent far too many years writing statements when I was at Supporters Direct, waving off another fan-owned club, or shaking my head seeing members of owners of a football club voting 50%, that 50% plus one vote to sell the football club. We are not that, because we've recognised the risks of having just a straightforward constitution on this. We have protections and we go through processes. So, you know, in the end, we have to be trusting of ourselves to do this properly. And to some extent, you're going to have to trust us to get it right. And we're going to have to trust you to be, you know, in the best way possible, grown up about the debate, and that we do this properly as a group of people who care about our club and own it.
Thank you. Jane Lonsdale submitted a question saying, what other options to managing our debt have been looked at rather than reducing our majority voting rights below 75%, e.g. looking at other fundraising initiatives?
Yeah, I guess that so lots that predate me. Graham Price on the board has instigated a fundraising group that's got a mix of board members, volunteers, club staff on. They're kind of brimming with ideas, and I'm sure they would, and they have done a call out for anyone to bring more ideas as well. I guess that this vote and kind of selling equity attracts more attention because of the size and the scale of it, and because of the restricted action votes and stuff like that. So none of what we are suggesting negates any of that fundraising activity, launching those fundraising initiatives. They're not my area of expertise by any stretch, but I know that Graham and a whole team of people are spending a lot of time thinking about it and kind of coming up with some really clever ideas. And that all sits along as just part of the mix. You know, kind of there is, you know, we keep saying it and everyone keeps saying it, there's no silver bullet to, you know, kind of to where we are. What we need is and it's a horrible word and I'm going to hate myself for saying it, is the options, the optionality of lots of different levers for us to pull to be able to pay down our debt, invest to grow, and grow our commercial revenue. Like, you know, like we said in the finance report, those are the three things that are going to drive our success. Yeah.
And just to add, as someone who sits on that group, who's just started up, Graham particularly has always been really keen, since I've been on the board, has always been really keen to both pursue as many of those options as possible. And secondly, also, very early on, was talking about ensuring that we had an ability to continue to buy back, even if we were selling any block of shares, that we always had to be. So it's called we call it financial activism, which we've done a lot of here, you know, buying the ground, buying Kingsmead, all that stuff. So that is a really important element of it. All of this comes, but every single time we have these discussions, I don't need to sort of sense the fear about all this stuff, because I kind of feel it as well in a way. But at some point, I mean, number one, we're not going to immediately, you know, I very much doubt the moment any vote like that passed and the board was given the power to do it, that immediately the next day there's going to be a sudden sale of all this equity and we're going to be plunged into this crisis. It's not really how it works. And it all does keep coming back to this thing of I think sometimes we forget the level of process that we go through at Wimbledon. The amount of effort that all boards, certainly pretty much every board I know, has gone through to deal with a big issue. You know, we've gone through these sorts of things so many times. I'm not dismissing the fear. I'm saying we've got to start to trust the fact that we actually do have process, and it's a very open process, actually. And I think we have to be quite, you know, I think we have to kind of be quite pleased with ourselves for that as a group of fans, not the board, everyone, because we have got process here and it is really good and we need to follow that.
Thank you. The next question we have comes from Stuart Deacons. Stu would like to know, are the Dons Trust Board confident they have spent enough time and resources regarding the 50+1 RA vote, considering the last one, the Back in 2 Ticks campaign, had a lot of extra exposure to members?
I guess that one's for me. Thanks, Stu. Yeah, kind of, you can always do more. We can always do, you can always communicate more. I think that we've got lots planned. I know I keep saying that, but that is the truth. There's going to be lots of communication and lots of information coming. There has been previously through the consultation process, all that kind of other stuff. So I think I think there is. You could always do more. As we go through the process, if people think there's stuff that's missing, please let me know. Kind of like, I can't, we can't do everything. I can't do everything. But kind of, we will always endeavor to fill information gaps that we can on stuff like this, because it's so important. So kind of that's what I guess that's the commitment I would say, is that we can't do everything. Kind of, we are kind of a limited number of human beings with a limited amount of time, but there is it's so important. So if you do see stuff that's missing, kind of, once we start, then please let me know. Please let other board members know, and we'll do our best to fill those information gaps.
Colette would like to know, will we get a detailed financial information breakdown in order to form a view? She says board minutes are so redacted as to be worthless, and statutory accounts are opaque. For example, she's told Silver Lounge is booked out continuously. So how are we doing commercially? So basically, are we going to be able to give out more detailed financial information as part of this campaign? The
financial update we did at the end of the year was, kind of, was pretty thorough. It wasn't accounts. It shouldn't be accounts. It's different to that. Kind of, there's a reasonable amount of information in our accounts that I don't understand, not as an accountant. I think there are more financial updates coming. Again, if there's, kind of, there's loads of stuff that we can't, kind of give because of commercial sensitivities and all that kind of stuff that, kind of, everyone knows about. So I think that, kind of, I think we will give as detailed a financial picture as we can. I think there is also a thing about, not to dismiss that question by any shape at all, but to kind of, to move slightly, there is a thing about these restricted action votes aren't necessarily about our picture today. They're about our future, and they're about giving us the best options for the future. So, kind of, the specifics of our financial situation at the moment is always really important. And obviously there's, lots of very clever people always looking at that. But I think it's, kind of, we could get tied down on the minutiae of where we are today, whereas actually this stuff is about where we are, where we all want to be in the future.
Thank you. Question that was sent in advance on a similar note. Are we going to have a proper explanation on what minority shareholders would be able to do if we drop down between 50 and 75%?
Yes. That's a simple answer. I can't give it to you now. But yes, the secretary and other kind of legal experts are working on that, and have been working on that for a while. I know that, in the last PLC SGMs and the Longhurst Trust SGMs, we put in protections in place that weren't there before to secure us, like no one owning more than 15%, for example. But there's lots of that information coming and on its way.
Thank you. Just circling back earlier to the question regarding membership changes, Jane Lonsdale said, was there ever any thought given to a vote of members on the membership changes, as it's a membership organisation? So was there any consideration given to let members vote on those changes?
Again, I joined halfway through that, which isn't to delegate responsibility at all. But I think it was felt collectively as the board that it was a, kind of, it was an operational decision, not an operational decision. It was a decision that the club and the trust could make together in their capacity. Kind of, the information we had, the guidance we had in terms of, kind of, options from members and views of members, felt that it was something that didn't need a members vote.
Yeah, so just to chuck in, George, yeah. It's a difficult one sometimes with Supporters Trust, because yes, it's a member organisation. The issue is, and obviously Jane's been on the board, so she knows this, that boards have to be able to make decisions, because in this country we operate on a basis of it's cabinet government, it's committees, essentially, of people making decisions. And they reserve the right to do certain things. And sometimes you might not agree with a decision that's made. But one thing that I am a little bit nervous about from time to time that I kind of get is, Why haven't the members had a vote on? And, you know, we aren't Switzerland, so we have to be a bit mindful that we don't do everything by plebiscite. And sometimes the odd decision might be regarded as a bit excessive on the part of the board that's taken it. My personal view was, you know, it's one of those things where you look at it and go, well, this is a big piece of work. And isn't that going to take up a lot of bandwidth? But the trouble is the timing was good for it. It was a good moment to do it because of the fact we've been back at Plough Lane for a few years. We've settled in a little bit. We've got to start making this organisation last longer than, you know, the 30 years left on this planet that people like me have got, quite probably. And we've got to be kind of creative in the way we do that. And it's an interesting thing, opt in, opt out. The only other club that I know did it, and it was before GDPR, was Swansea, because I went and spoke to them about it, because I knew they'd done it when they had a very good, active relationship with the club. Slightly less so now. And I think it's broadly a very good idea, and lots of people in that field said it was a good idea too. So it's sort of, I think it's one of those things that's a bit marginal. And I was on the board when that was being done, and I just think it's one of those things that, you know, to some extent, you sort of just. I think we had the power to do that. We had the right. We felt we had the right to do it, and we thought it was the right thing to do. And in the end, we were elected or dismissed on those decisions.
Thank you. The next sort of questions we have sort of that came in advance were surrounding the elections and the makeup of the board. So some of these will be a bit quick fire. The first one is, how many board members are there currently?
It's
10.
Oh, it's 10, isn't it? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
10 including the casual vacancy co-option.
Yes, sorry. I'm not the one to ask. Let's forget how many people there are.
The other one, how many of the current members will be standing for election later this year?
Oh, well, is this a quiz or something? I'm not standing. So there you go. You can take one off of me. We don't know, because all people will put in there. I think actually it's a bit unfair. I'm the only one who said I won't stand because I just can't fit it in with everything I do. And I think I've done what I wanted to do now, pretty much. Certainly comes to the close. So I don't think it's fair to start trying to get people to declare that they're running yet. And besides which, it'd be nice to see whoever asked the question running, perhaps. Maybe some of those people out there would like to consider it, because I think you could bring something to the board if you're active like you are on this call. Get in, get your hands dirty. It's good. It's a really worthwhile thing to do. Really worthwhile. You know, even if it's just one term.
So I think just there are 4 board members whose elected terms are up this year. I think it's 4. Yeah, it's 4 are up this year, and then there's also, like I said, the casual vacancies and things like that end this year as well. So the other question is, how are the board hoping to promote the election this year to prevent a repeat from last year where there was a not contested election?
It's not for us to promote the election in that sense. The election steering group will do it. Number 2, it was a non-contested election for lots of reasons. I have to be honest with you, at times last year was a bit uncomfortable. In terms of the pressure at times placed on the board. I think at times there was I think at times there were some people who were, I'm you know, maybe I'm being a bit Demore Pappy, but I'd say anyway, even if I was standing, I think some people were being a bit unfair on the board, given the issues that we had to juggle, the things that were moving so fast, that we had to make very snap decisions. There were things I was involved in that I've been involved in before in football, but not at my own club, and they were very, very, very difficult to deal with in my sort of capacity in public relations and sort of fan engagement, whatever, all this sort of stuff I do. So you know, it's as I say, it's important that people understand that being on the board does require you to carry responsibility, and it can be quite heavy sometimes. I've actually forgotten what the question is because I've gone off on one of my trademark diversions, but you know, maybe it was useful, maybe it wasn't.
I think the answer to the question, I think, which Kev's covered quite a bit, but and George has as well. But broadly, it's up to individuals whether they stand or not. We don't know the answer to all of them. You know, kind of Kev's Kev said here, that he's not. He's actually got a bit of time to change his mind if he wanted to as well. Until nomination papers go out and come in, we won't know. Who's standing. And it was about promoting the election, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was as Kev said, it's about the ESG. There's a handbook going out to all members very shortly that mentions elections and encourages members to stand and take part in elections as well. So kind of hopefully that will drum up some interest.
Thank you. I've just seen a question come up in the chat logs. If you are submitting questions, please use the Q&A, but I'll ask this one for Lawrence. He says, in the future, will the DTB ensure they have an active presence at all of the women's games at Plough Lane and Rains Park to help reach the next generation of supporters?
James, can I take this one? This comes back to elections. It comes back to volunteering. We can't cover everything, not even if we have a full complement. And I don't think it's fair to expect the board to be the thing that represents everything. We are elected to do the jobs we do, and we do have to put in considerable time at times. James, I'll speak for James here, and I've gone through periods where it's been very, 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 very busy. James has worked his rear end off for the last since he joined the board. I'm beginning to wonder how he's actually got any client work done, because he's been working constantly on loads and loads of things, really important, and not just doing things half-assed. He does a good job on these things, a really good job. And it's really important that people out there realise we don't elect a board to do stuff for 2 or 3 years, and then we either dismiss them or re-elect them if they've done everything. And I'm trying not to sound patronising, but I think people have a tendency to do that. I think they do that with government. I think they do that with elections anyway. We also, and that's why James finally got the work that I started on the membership handbook a while back. He's finally got that done to his great credit, which I'm really pleased about, and it looks terrific. That membership handbook is really important, because we need to start promoting membership. We need to, not just that, volunteering opportunities. The amount of time that Wimbledon fans are prepared to give over the years, I don't need to go into, and I certainly don't need to go with Lawrence, who knows that. I know, and I've known Lawrence. Me and you have known him for a long time. There are loads of opportunities. I think it's our collective responsibility. We need to create that opportunity as a board, and the future board will need to do that. We need to do that, create those opportunities, so that we can start bringing volunteers in to do things like that. Not because the board are lazy, but because the board can't cover everything.
Thank you.
Sorry, there was a hyper-specific question in there. I'm not going to add much more to what Kev said, but that was really good. The hyper-specific question in there about like LED stuff, that's something I'm working on at the moment with kind of getting the right messages for that, because that's an easy win, but it like all things, it just takes time, and there's lots on. So not an excuse, but that is the answer.
Another question that we've had come in advance. There's been a question similar to it coming live on the chat as well, so I'll count them as one. Can we explain the board's response to the recent members called SGM petition?
What do you mean?
I think they'd like to know what process we go into, what stage are we at of doing things, how have we reacted to it as a board?
Oh, I'll just say one thing, and then James has had a lot more involvement lately. I think we've been pretty, I think we've tried to work constructively. I think there's been, it's what you should do when those things come along. And I think, I also think probably we're at a sort of, unsurprisingly for me, we're at a bit of a stage with things like the rules where I think those are the sorts of things we need to spend a bit of time on, getting to understand them, getting to unknot them a little bit, explain them a bit more, understand them collectively a bit better. Because I think everyone has been on the board for the last 15, 18 years, because they're a very old set of rules. They're the original model rules from when I started in this. And, I think we all need to get our heads down, and obviously the board and the secretariat need to lead on that. But I think we all need to get our heads around all these sorts of things. These are sorts of things we didn't have to think about when we were thinking of coming back to Wimbledon, or building a stadium or getting back into the Football League. These are the things that you now have to think about to make your organisation function for the future. So anyway, I'll leave James on the practicalities, because he's been a bit more involved, but I just thought that was useful framing.
Yeah, I think that my big takeaway since joining the board is that we need to rewrite the constitution. Loads of work has gone on again in the past on that. That's something that just needs to happen, and probably has been overdue for, Kev will say, any number of years. In terms of the specifics, lots of stuff are with the secretariat at the moment, so we can't, until we're, until their advice has been given to us, we can't say much more about that at the moment until all the technical stuff's been sorted. Once that's been sorted, we can then engage a lot more, hopefully, on the specifics. The only to add, calling these meetings is well within the rights of the members. 100% support that. Looking, I think part of the resolutions is picking up on a load of stuff on the constitution that needs to get fixed. We know the constitution is every conversation we have about it starts with our constitution's a bit wonky. That's not a technical term, but that's the that's the general view. So hopefully we can over the next period get that sorted.
Oh, George, just a quick addition this is something that Tim Hillier did a lot of work on. Not everyone will know Tim, but he's also one of the match day SLOs. There's lots been done. The issue, as always, is that when you're in the position we're in, where we've been looking at these big issues all the time, they get stuck in the pipeline. It's just what happens. Now we're starting to see that, and we need to deal with them. So it's been a good process, and we're spending a lot of, the FSA are involved as the people who are the guardians of the model rules now, their solicitors, all that stuff. So there's loads of stuff happening around that, as James said.
Thank you. Alex Feely says, trust in the board has been damaged recently. He says, how did the board go about repairing this?
I'll take it. I think some people believe trust in the board has been damaged. I don't think that's fair to say everyone thinks that. I hear this talk about very regularly that our comms is terrible. I think we've gone through a period since more or less, and it's sheer coincidence, I can assure you, but from when I joined in December 2021, I think that was it, or I'm trying to remember now. But it was Johnny Jackson's first season. Halfway through that, it's been there's been some tough periods, actually, and kind of slightly tougher than normal. We've had lots of things that have happened that have been a bit out of nowhere. And I think, again, for me, it comes down to this thing of it wasn't me, Gov. I'm off the board and I don't care anymore, because anyone who knows me knows I don't think that way. It's more that I think sometimes we need to be a bit more proportionate in how we view a board. And I think it's incumbent on everyone, people who are on the board, people who've been on the board, people who are never going to stand for the board, people who want to stand for the board. It's incumbent on all of us to create an environment where the conversations we have to have are done in the right way and are done in an open and tolerant fashion. And I'm not sure we've always done that, if I'm honest. And I've certainly found at times, and I don't tend to pay much attention to social media anymore, because if I did, I couldn't do all the work I do. Not in terms of my personal life, but we need to just be a bit more tolerant of what we all do, and not that you give us a break because we're incompetent and useless and you just let us get away with stuff. You hold us to account. But it concerns me sometimes the way that some people speak about the board and speak about fellow fans and other people who think differently to them. And I don't think that's a healthy thing. And I think we have to constantly be on our guard not to be like that, because the reason we achieve what we achieved, the reason we continue to achieve what we achieve, is because of how we pull together and how we disagree properly and disagree agreeably, as someone recently said. Yeah.
Thank you. Changing topic slightly, Alex Pugh says, how do we go about engaging with the new members that have recently joined?
Good question, Alex. The members handbook that's coming out hopefully today, if not tomorrow, it's step one of, or not step one, is one of the steps of that. I think there's lots of activity. I think it's really, kind of, I've been a quiet member of the trust since 2003. Basically, I've turned up to occasional meetings. I've contributed behind the scenes on some bits, but I think it's always really dangerous to represent any one specific way of communicating as the membership. So, kind of like, because people will engage with us in a whole range of different ways, and we need to kind of give them that opportunity. And some people don't want to engage with us as a trust. Some people are really happy to be members of the trust, kind of vote on issues they particularly care about and sit in the background, and that's fine too. So that's not to dismiss the question. I think it's really important that we, the trust is what makes us unique. Our members, our fans, our ownership is part of what makes us unique. It's not the only thing that makes us unique by any stretch. But so I think there's lots of work to do to engage people, and it will go on, and it will continue to go on, and it always has. But I think I'm just really cautious of anyone. I'm not saying you're doing this, Alex, but just broadly, we're seeing a lot at the moment is that, kind of anyone who says the membership are here. Well, that's only a small portion. There's only ever been a small portion. So I think that, like, we've got to be, kind of find lots of different ways to engage with people. What I know from my professional life is, like, you've got to communicate where the audience are. So whether that's in the stadium, I was looking at our international data, we've got about 8.5% of our membership are in the US. So, we need to think about specific ways of communicating with them on their time zones, and that, there's more on that coming. We've got, smaller pockets of members further, in different parts of the world as well. So it's about going where they are, understanding more about what our younger membership, who are, the future of the membership organization, what they want as well. And I can't kind of profess to know that off the top of my head, but there is, kind of, whether that's different social media channels, whether that's different forums, whether that's forums just for them, there's lots of work going on that kind of stuff as well. So I think that's probably broadens the question a bit, but that's my view on it.
Thank you. One of the advanced questions we come in was to both of you, and says, how have you improved communications to the DT membership over the past few months?
Well, can I just say, for me, for my money, James has been one of the most effective people when it comes to communications in the organisation, just because when I joined the board, we didn't have someone like James. I can do a lot of this stuff, but it's not my specialist area. And I do it for my business, but I tend to employ people to do it for me more than I do it myself. And so I just, I think it's worth pointing that out. And also, I had some pretty bad stuff going on this year. So James turning up has meant that there's been stuff done that might have got lost. Me, myself, the consultation process was critical, I think, and trying to get that up and running. The thing about communications is, for me, is lots of people tend to think of it as speaking, pushing messages out, saying something. Lots of it is about actually the architecture of it, what goes on around it, what's the structure of it, how do you deal with a crisis when it comes out of left field, which I've been involved in. I was involved in late summer last year very heavily, for example, all those sorts of things. So and that also reduces the tension on the rest of the organisation when a crisis is dealt with well. That then means people like James can do their job. That tends to be where I sit now. I tend to kind of sit back on and talk about the big stuff, the big structural stuff, and not that James doesn't, but he's an excellent marketing communicator and understands where to push messages and how to communicate with individual groups and stuff. So that's what I've done. And as I said, sorry, James, I've already answered for you, mate, but you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Kev, and not to make this kind of a mutual backslapping society, because that's not what it's about at all. But one of the things that we're going to see out, kind of, again, I keep alluding to it, is the membership handbook, which Kev started, and kind of that I've built on and managed to kind of get out the door with help from the club as well. And I think part of what I've tried to do personally, but none of what I do is personal, is look, put some structure around stuff. Think about everything I do in my professional life is thinking about audiences. So, like, who is the audience for this? Where are they? How are we engaging with them? Kind of, what have we told them in the past? What have they told us? Like, that kind of thing. we won't always get it right, and we don't have kind of the time and resources to always get it right either. But that for me is what I've tried to do. Specifically, there's we again working with loads of other people on getting the financial update out, which was kind of piece of work. I was quite proud of the whole team that worked on that, because I think it was really kind of it was a bit of a flagship moment in terms of just improving the way that we talk about our finances with our fans and our members. And for me, that's not job done. That's like step one of many steps of doing that. Not everyone will have read it. Don't expect that. It's it's not perfect by any stretch, but it's about building those things. Getting the members handbook out is one of those bits as well. And just having more regular, different kinds of communication, I think, is the kind of thing that I've tried to do and want to see more of. But kind of never, none of it's perfect, right? And none of it's done on my own, kind of by any stretch of the imagination.
Thank you. The next question we have was sent in advance, saying, are individual members of the Dons Trust Board allowed to offer their individual views on the decision, or is there a mandate around collective responsibility?
We talked about that actually, coincidentally, at the last board meeting, and I think that kind of Kev will jump in. He's much better on the kind of structural stuff than I am, and has more experience on it. But I think kind of it's really important that he talked about cabinet responsibility and the board working together. I think the view we have is that kind of if any individual board member has a different view, they should be free to express that. Of course they should. They should be free to express that as members, with the view that also they'll explain the board position, and they'll kind of help their board colleagues in delivering what the agreed position is. So I think people should be free to give their personal opinions on issues if they dissent from the kind of rest of the board on it, and even if they don't dissent from the rest of the board on it as well. But I think there's a kind of the key thing is for us to work as a board, and I've joined a board that has been working really well previously and continues to work really well, and I'm the kind of last but one joiner of it now. I've been really impressed by the individuals on it as well, kind of none of whom I knew before. So I think that collective responsibility is really part of that success, but it's not a blanket thing.
Can I I'll chuck in, I'm a bit more hard line on these things than James. I think the board meetings are where you express dissent and where you iron issues out. I think if it's sort of sometimes if it's sort of small issues that aren't that problematic, that's different to a major issue, and I wouldn't brook public dissent by a colleague on the board on a major issue, because I don't think that's how cabinet government operates. And this is what we are in. We are not elected as individuals. We're elected as a collective, and that's why occasionally when some people stand and they do it on the basis of sort of, when I get on the board, this is what's going to happen. Sorry, mate, that's not how it works. Depends on who else is around you, and actually argue your case. You might be right, you might be wrong, but the key for me is that, yeah, you've got to respect the fact that the structure of things is the way it is, and to some extent, no, you can't change the tradition that we operate within. So you have to operate within that tradition. So as I said, I'm a bit more hardline than James, but I don't think you shouldn't dissent. I just slightly disagree, and here we are disagreeing a little bit, perhaps on where you express that dissent.
Thank you. There was one line that seemed to be cut off from my screen for some reason on Alex Pugh's question. He says the full question was, how do the board intend to engage new members into the ethos of fan ownership as paramount while still managing the debt?
That's what James is doing, and that's what the board are intent on ensuring, and that's what the consultation tells us. That's what the survey, and whenever it was that Nicole Hammond led on years ago, it's what every single piece of surveying and consultation we've done for years has told us. So it's not even how are we going to do it. It's that's the premise. That's the basis on which we operate. This is the kind of thing that I'm kind of getting at, which is how are you going to guarantee fan ownership? I understand why people are asking that. We're not on the board to do anything other than primarily the two things is to ensure that we retain the basic functions, that we retain our assets, and that we remain fan owned. Those are the key. If we don't have those, we'll forget. We might as well just walk away. I'm not going to run a supporters club. I'm not interested. This is fan ownership. Everything works on that premise. And if you don't like it, campaign to change it, but you won't succeed. So get behind it. Anyway.
Yeah, for my part, like, kind of, I don't know how people know my background, but I keep saying recently, like, the day the three-man commission handed down its verdict, I was, kind of handing in my university dissertation on fan ownership in football. It just happened that I was a Wimbledon fan and it was happening to my club, kind of, and I worked as sports director in the early days and stuff like that. Like, kind of fan ownership is always, is the thing I care about. Kind of, and my 12-year-old son will tell you I bore him to death with the joys of fan ownership on a, kind of on a weekly basis. And so it's paramount in all of our communications.
Thank you. The next question, just to end on a couple more sort of finance ones. The question in advance says basically the decision seems to have been made by the board to recommend dropping below 75%. How was this strategic decision reached?
Again, hang on. The board paper recommended dropping below 75%. We went through a consultation process and a surveying process very intentionally to understand what people were prepared to countenance. This is being presented in some quarters, and I'm being a little bit bullish about this, but I just think it's important, as being the board has decided we're going to go below 75.1%. What we did was we went away and we had a proper process which was signed off at every level. You might not like where it came out, but we had a proper process. It's the reason that it was one of the first things I did when I got onto the board. Is I said, I will set up a proper consultation process. We will do it this way. We will have it signed off by someone who knows what he's talking about and who runs these things for a living. We can't afford to do the full SP. We've already explained that, but we've done it properly. We've gone through loads of processes. The idea that we've gone away and kind of commissioned a report, and I'm sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just saying this because it's really important. The idea that we've gone away and commissioned a report that says drop us below 75.1% is not true. It's grossly irresponsible, if I'm honest, because it completely misrepresents what's happened. It completely ignores the process we've been through. And I do understand it's the fear. Can I just quickly pick up, George? On here, Adam Proctor's saying, I know we don't normally do this, but he's saying that we can't remain fan owned if we drop below 75%. I don't know I don't know where you've got your information from, but that's not correct. Exeter own, the Sports Trust Exeter own around about 62% of the shares in Exeter City Football Club. No one would argue that they're fan owned. So look, let's just make sure, this is my sort of plea really, is I don't want a board to be given a blank check to do what the hell they like, because that way lies madness, right? What I want is for us to read and understand what we do as a board, to see that we've gone through process, yes, to hold us to account, yes, to tell us when they think we get it wrong, but to appreciate that we're not just going off and making decisions and deciding it's going to be like this and then throwing it to the membership and going, well, you have to take it all with screw. That is not what has happened. It is never what's happened in my time on the board. That's all I can say.
Thank you. I'm aware we've only got a couple of minutes left, so we'll try and get through these last couple.
It's okay, George. Run over, mate. Run over a little bit if you need to. Don't mind.
Thank you.
Just to add to Kev's, sorry, super quick, George. Sorry, just to add to Kev's point on that. It's not just from the board, like, kind of, we're acting off the consultation of finance committee recommendations, which have members of the board on and people who are deeply invested in fan ownership as well. So it's this, as Kev says, there's so much information that's feeding into this. It's none of it's coming out of the clear blue sky.
Thank you. Adam Proctor sent this question earlier when we were discussing finances. He says, so the only way out of debt is to sell equity. That seems to be what we are presenting. Does that seem short-sighted and a way to cede control to others? Is it short-sighted to sell equity?
No, we have not said it's the only way of we've already said there are loads of levers. What we've got to do is give ourselves as many levers as possible, That's one. In fact, James, sorry, mate, but Graham came up with that. He's copyright. He's always talked about levers, and he's right, and that's why we need the financial activism to ensure that lever is the one that makes sure we don't just fall. and that every opportunity we get, we're buying back, right? We're part of what that fundraising, which I don't like that term fundraising, because it makes us sound like a charitable, with charity with a bucket. It's a finance, we're looking at financing options and things like that, as well as fundraising and raising large amounts of money. This is this is not, we are going to sell this much and that is it. This is a whole process and a whole set of things we need to do in order to manage the debt, pay it down, develop and grow. And if we don't, and Adam, equity sale is the worst lever to pull for debt management. The consultation gave us plenty of options, plenty of feedback. We've looked at lots and lots of things. We're still looking at lots of things. I also know there are people concerned about future protection of the asset. There's lots of conversations going on about that. There's going to be some work around additional protections, conversation about, there's so much work happening. I do appreciate that people are worried, concerned, but do please at least accept that this is a long process here. It's a long process, and it hasn't just been pulled out of the blue sky or out of somewhere else, as James said.
And just to reiterate as well, and I kind of appreciate I keep promising there's going to be more information coming and stuff like that, and I appreciate that can be frustrating when when everyone wants answers to a discussion. Now, we're not saying that selling equity is the route out of debt at all by any stretch. There's lots of options. Selling equity, if we go down that route, means that we can do the kind of investing to grow. We can look at some of the capital growth projects that we're talking about, which will secure secure the chance to grow more revenue and develop, develop in lots of different ways. So it's about those options, just to be really, really clear. It's not about selling down the one thing we have to pay off debt. That isn't what we're talking about. And
Lawrence, you're right. Once equity has been sold, it can't be sold again. But again, the point of all of this, why Graham proposed the idea of the ongoing financial activism and buying back, is this has to be that we have that option. We have other things. There are other things we need to do. There are other things we can do, and that we don't just see this as a silver bullet. And Adam, that's fine if you don't buy any of these arguments. You're quite at liberty to disagree with me. I don't agree with you. If that's all it is, that we just disagree, that's fine. But we have done a lot of work on this, and we got a very clear view that most fans accept the idea that this might be part of one of the levers we pull.
Thank you. I'd say, just because of time, I think we've got 3 questions that we'll go through and then we'll call time. So we'll start with Jane's question. You've talked a lot about levers and options in relation to finance. Will these be presented alongside the other option to go below 75%?
Yeah, as much as we can. Yes, 100. And the good question. Keep asking. I can't give you the specifics now. They're not in my remit, but they will be in. Kind of everything we can do will be in the documentation that we send out.
Thank you. Alex Feely says, why have the board stopped commenting on pro boards? He has to mention James here as one of the few that does engage. What is the preferred method of engaging now?
Can I take it, James? Because I'm currently moderating again. With the greatest of respect, pro boards is not a very nice place to communicate quite frequently, right? There are good people on there, a lot of good people on there, because a lot of people I know are on there who try to be constructive and try to be decent. But I'm afraid on far too many occasions, it turns into a toxic, poisonous place. And again, for me, it comes back to the need to be respectful, to disagree agreeably, as we say, all that kind of stuff. It's too easy to sit there and call someone something you wouldn't say to their face. And the tone sometimes with which that place undertakes debate is, as I said, it's toxic. and it's off-putting. And I'm afraid, in one respect, as a professional in that field and in football and everything around fan engagement, I think it's a medium which doesn't work for most people. I think it works for some people. It doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone agrees with me. That's fine. I don't mind. You can disagree. But all I would say is I will plead, please just be respectful. I can't go on there and call you all the names under the sun, and neither can you do that to me or anyone else. And just try and be civil. That's all. And if you want to disagree, go right ahead. I love a ding dong, you can tell. But please, that's the bit that's missing. That is the bit that I'm finding is quite sad, actually, at times, that people are prepared to say things online because it's easy, because your dopamine levels are up, or whatever it is, or you've had a bad day, or you didn't kick the cat when you got home. You've got to start being more civil. That's why I find it problematic to post on pro boards. It's why I do what I have to do, but I don't like spending too much time on it. So if you all want to be a bit nicer, maybe I'll pop on a bit more often. But you know, when I'm just an ordinary member, maybe I'll feel differently, but I'm not sure I will.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is there is similar to the conversation we were having earlier about engaging with new members and engaging with members more broadly. As a board, we have to apply our time to everywhere where our members are. Kind of pro boards and the nature of it is very demanding. There's lots of questions. Threads can kind of spiral out and stuff like that. And there's lots of paying, kind of very close attention to the minutiae of what you're writing, which is everyone's right, but makes writing responses really hard. But personally, I find, if I'm trying to reply to something, I have to think about it way too much because I'm worried about kind of words being pulled out into the wrong context and stuff like that. So what I've tried to do recently is engage in like kind of an entirely good faith, kind of good faith purposes, and let's see how that goes, kind of thing. That's my attitude. But what I would say is that, kind of, if I'm doing that, it means I'm not doing some other communication elsewhere in the kind of like in the time I have to allocate, which is, kind of depending on, if you ask my family whether that's an appropriate amount of time or not, the time I have to allocate to the trust, kind of is finite. And so if I'm doing stuff on pro boards, I'm not doing stuff elsewhere. So I have to balance personally, and other board members have to balance the work they do responding to that, responding to pro boards or responding to Twitter or writing papers or, kind of communicating with members face to face, attending events and, all that kind of stuff. It's about the application of finite time in the most appropriate way. Kind of that's my view, really.
Just George, just one other thing.
We had a couple of questions. Sorry,
can I just,
did you want to say something?
Just very quickly, the reason pro boards isn't a nice place isn't because I don't respect it. The reason is I think everyone needs to respect it. I think that's the problem is that we kind of, maybe we seek to blame people a bit too much. One person's fault, it's their fault. I think people just need to dial down a little bit at times, and it doesn't mean we can't have rambunctious, healthy debate, because we do. I just think sometimes people need to be a little bit less worked up when they sit and post and learn that actually it's just not, sometimes it's just unpleasant online, and I'm afraid everyone has to take responsibility.
Thank you. We've had a lot of questions come in, but we've already overrun, so I'll ask one more. All the others I'll make a note of, and we'll prepare something, write it up and publish it somewhere. So all your questions, if you send them in, will be answered. Just this is the only one we'll do live tonight. Jeff Ricketts sent this in a bit earlier, saying he was deeply suspicious of the free membership with season tickets. Will there be a survey of the new members to ascertain how it's gone down with the new members?
Yeah, the really short answer. Yeah, we're due a survey out to the new members, and returning members. Like lots of the season ticket holders, kind of are not new to the trust, in any way, shape, or form. They're people who've been trust members over our long history. So yeah, we will be doing a survey. Like I was talking about communications and understanding our audiences, understanding our fans. I want us to be able to do more research more frequently, so they're not like big onus surveys. I want us to be able to dip in, find out, use other tools for listening to people as well. So the short answer to that is yes, very much so.
Thank you. And to end on a positive note, everyone's membership handbook should have just arrived in their inboxes. So I'm sure that's everyone's evening reading sorted. So that's all we've done. We're slightly overrun. So I'd like to say a massive thank you to James for joining me. A massive thank you to Kevin for joining me. Thank you for all of you who've joined us this evening, sent in your questions. It's been a really good evening. Hopefully we've answered all of them. And just like James said earlier, there's a lot of events that are going to be coming out over the next month or so. So keep a track of the Donströss on all the social media platforms and the website. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of you very soon. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you. Have a good evening and good night.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Thank you.